Okay, in this video, I want to show you how to draw out the air skimmer parts. This is just the drawing of the air skimmer, it's not anything else. Alright, so you need four things. You need your ruler, you need your pencil, you need the direction sheet with the measurements on it, and you need your tag board. Okay? Now the first thing we're going to do is I like to make the main body panel first. And I like to use the corner of my papers because I know that those are straight lines. I don't have to worry about measuring and drawing straight to start out with. I can just start right on the edge and I know it's straight. Alright, and so the first thing I want to do is the entire length is 11 inches. So I'm going to get my ruler and I'm going to measure 11 inches. And I'm going to zoom in because I want you to look at something really quick. Alright, with this ruler, the 0 does not start at the edge of the ruler. It starts a little bit in. So when I go to measure 11 inches, I don't start at the end of the ruler. I start a little bit in. So make sure you do that. Alright, so I'm going to pull it back up here. I'm going to measure 11 inches. So I'm going to start up here, making sure I'm relatively straight all the way down. And down here, I'm just going to make a little mark because that's where my 11 inches ends. Alright, I'm going to come out a little bit. It doesn't really matter how much. I'm going to measure 11 more inches. I like to have two marks because every line, every 2 points is a line. And so if I have 2 points here, I can make a straight line through that. So I have my 2 points here. Alright, so now I'm going to look at my direction sheet and I see that the width of it is 4 inches. So I'm going to come to my dots down here and I'm going to measure 4 inches. So I'm going to connect those dots and make the line 4 inches. So I'm going to start at the 0 line and draw a straight line that's 4 inches long. Alright, it's okay if it's not perfect, if it doesn't completely match up with both points. Mine's just a little bit off, and that's fine. Then I'm going to come down here. I'm going to measure 4 inches this way. So I'm going to line the corner of my paper up at 4, and I'm going to make a little line at the 0. Alright, so I know I have 4 inches down here, and I know I have 4 inches marked out down here, so I have 2 points. I have the end point here, and I have the end point here. So I can take my, I'm trying to zoom out so you can see all of it here. Alright, I'm going to take my paper, I'm going to line up those points. Alright, you don't even have to measure because you know that this is 11 inches away. You've measured that already. Alright, and so then I'm just going to connect my dots. Connect my points. And so now I have the outline of the main body panel. Alright, I have an 11 by 4 rectangle. Next, I need to draw these inside lines. And these inside lines are 1/2 inch from the sides. So I'm going to go back to my paper and I'm going to line it up. I like to be able to see my edges when I measure things. That's why I turn the paper around. So I got my 4 inches there. I know I have to go 1/2 inch from this side in. So it's right here. So I'm going to make a little mark. And then I'm at 4 inches, so I go 1/2 inch in. It's at 3 1/2. And I make a little mark. Alright, so now I have one set of points. Let's go to the other side and do the other set of points. Alright, so I'm going to go here and I'm going to just kind of line my ruler up. And at 1/2 I'm going to make a mark. And at 4 1/2 3 1/2 I'm going to make a mark. Alright, now I'm not quite ready to, well, let's go ahead and draw those lines. So I'm going to connect the dots. How was that? I may have made a mistake, which is okay. We can fix mistakes. I made it at, see how I noticed this one was not quite the same distance as this one over here? So I can double check, and it looks like I did it at 1/4 instead of 1/2. So it's good to kind of check yourself, like I just did, to make sure you're really at ½ inch. And that they kind of match all the others. Otherwise, that would have been a very diagonal line. So now I'm going to connect my dots on the edges here. Alright, and same thing over here. I'm going to line my dots up. Standing up, sorry. And I'm going to connect my dots here. Okay, like I said, it may not be perfect. Look, I didn't even get pencil touching the paper for that one. Alright. So now I've got the edge lines, but some of them are dotted. And so it's solid for 3 inches and then dotted for the rest. So I need, on these lines, to measure out 3 inches. 3 inches. Alright, so I'm going to line my ruler up here. I'm going to go in 3 inches and make a little mark. Alright, I'm going to come down here. I'm going to go 3 inches and I'm going to make a little mark. I'm going to keep my marks on the inside so I don't get confused. So on the inside paneling here. Alright, then I'm going to take my eraser. Alright, and I'm just going to make these solid lines into dotted lines. Alright, so you can choose to measure the 3 inches first and then make the dotted lines, but I like to make the lines and then just use my eraser. Alright, and so there we have some dotted lines. That's where we're going to be folding it in the next video. We don't cut the dotted lines, we fold the dotted lines. So it's cut up here, not down here. Alright, so then I take a look at this paper and I notice that I have a dotted line connecting those 3-inch marks. So I come back to my paper and I'm going to line the ruler up to connect those dots. This time I can draw a dotted line. So I'm going to draw my dotted line between those 2 dots. And so now, this is what I have, and I have my main body panel. I've used the edges of the tag board, and so I know I have 2 straight edges, and then I've got my lines in the middle that'll get folded. So it looks just like this, only measured to the right distance. Alright? So the next thing we want to work on, I like to work on the fins. Alright? And I connect them like this. It makes it a little easier for me. Alright? Alright, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to measure 3 inches by 3 inches to make this corner. Okay? And I'm going to use the corner of my tag board. I know this is a perfect corner, so I can make it work. So I'm going to measure 3 inches up from this corner and 3 inches over from this corner. So I'm going to take my ruler, I'm going to line it up with the 3 inches, so that's this 3 inches lined up with the 3 inches down here, and I'm going to make a little mark. I like to make my little marks. Then I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to do the same thing. Measure out to where 3 inches, and actually, because we have another one connected right to it, that's also 3 inches, I'm going to go ahead and mark up to 6 inches. So I lined it up, I put a mark where 3 inches was, I'm going to come down here and also mark 6 inches so that I'm ready when it comes time to do the second one. Alright, now the next thing I want to do is I want to draw this little ½ inch line coming out and this little ½ inch line coming up. Okay, so I'm going to go to my dot at the top and line it up with my 0. And draw just a ½ inch line. So not very big. Alright, so I'm going to zoom my camera in here so you can see this. Alright. Sorry about all the movement. So I've got my little dot here. I'm just going to measure to a ½ inch. So here's my ½ inch. I'm just going to draw a line there to the edge. Okay. Same thing down here. You can turn the paper around if you want to start at the 0. I'm fine with just starting in the middle. So I line up the edge of my paper with 1/2 inch, and I'm going to go to the 0. So I'm just going to draw a line that's 1/2 inch long. And then the last thing I have to do is connect the edges of these lines to make this diagonal. I don't have to measure this diagonal. If I've measured this and this correctly, this will be measured correctly. Alright, so I just connect the ends of my lines. And I have one fin ready to go. Alright. Next, I have to draw my other fin. And so I'm going to do this one, which is the same as the one over here. So this side is 3 inches, just like this one's 3 inches. So I'm going to go to where I marked my 6 inches earlier. I'm going to measure 3 inches up. So I'm going to come here to where I already marked where my 6 inches was. Alright, I'm going to measure 3 inches up. And it should line up kind of with that one, so it should give you kind of a good idea of how big it should be. If you're on the right track or if you measured incorrectly. That's a good way to tell. So I just drew a line that's 3 inches long. Then I'm going to measure 1/2 inch in, just like I did over here. Okay, and see, I like to use that to help me make sure I'm still straight. So I'm going to measure 1/2 inch in. And then now I have to connect the end of this line to this thing down here. Alright, so I'm going to line it up and draw it. Alright, and I can kind of fudge with the lines a little bit. These are the fins, so it's not as big a deal. Okay? Move the rest of my eraser in. Okay, so we have our 2 fins now. You'll end up splitting those 2 apart into 2 individual fins rather than one big piece later. So now we want to move on to the air scoop. So we're almost done with the measuring out. And we're almost done with this video. Alright, so we just have one more, and this is the hardest one. I'm going to talk through it a little bit before we do it. Rather than trying to measure what these little tiny diagonals are and things like that, what we're going to start with is we're going to start with this inside box. This is a 3 inch by 3 inch by 3 inch by 3 inch box. And so the first thing we're going to do is just make that square. Alright, we're not going to worry about the diagonal or the dotted lines right now. We're not going to worry about the 1/8 of an inch or the 3/8 of an inch, because we can add those on after we're done with the square in the middle. But it's easier to start with that square in the middle and build off of that than to try and measure this one and this one and have them come out correctly. Alright, so I don't start on a corner for this one because it is diagonal on the edges, but I do start at the bottom of the page, so that the bottom of my air fin, my air scoop, is straight. Alright, so I'm going to measure. I'm going to put 2 dots, one at the beginning of my ruler, one at the end, where 3 inches, so that I have 3 inches measured out on the bottom. I'm going to put my ruler down here. Make sure you leave yourself a little room between the fins and the air scoop, and between the air scoop and the edge of the paper. Don't go right to the edge of the paper. So I'm going to make a little dot at the 0, and I'm going to do a little dot at the 3. Alright. Then I'm going to go to the first dot, and I'm going to measure 3 inches up. So I'm going to straighten that line up and just draw a 3 inch line going up. Don't worry about doing a dotted line. Just do a solid one right now. I'm going to do the same at the other notch that I made. So I'm going to measure 3 inches up. Alright, I like to try and see if I'm straight over here. That's probably the hardest thing about this air scoop, is making our lines straight. Okay? And so there I have the 3 sides of my square. Alright, so then I just have to connect the top. Alright, and so now I have my square. So the next thing we're going to do is at the bottom, at the edge of this square, we are going to measure 3/8 of an inch to the left and 3/8 of an inch to the right. So I'm going to come to the bottom of my square with my ruler, alright? I'll start right here, and I'm going to zoom in really far so you can really see these 8s, because this is delicate work. So here's my square, okay? And here's my ruler, and so I'm going to line up my 0, and it's 3/8. So 1/8 is right here, 2/8 is here, 3/8 is right here. And so I'm going to put just a little dot there. I don't want a big one because I am going to be drawing a diagonal from it. Alright? There's 3/8 there. I'm going to come over to the other side of my square and do the exact same thing. So I line up the 0, I count 1/8, 2/8, which is also 1/4, and there's 3/8 right there. So I'm going to make a little line to show that. Okay? Then on my paper I look, I have to measure 1/8 of an inch from the top. So I'm going to do the same thing but on the top of my square. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to line up my 0 at the top. This time I can actually draw a line at the 1/8. So here's my 1/8. I'm going to draw a line from the top over here to that 1/8. I didn't do that down here because we had the edge. We didn't have a line here to make the bottom of my square. I just had the edge of the paper. So that's why we made a dot down there. But up at the top we need to do just 1/8 of an inch line. We need to do the same thing on the other side. Alright, line it up at the 1/8 and draw a line connecting. So it's not very big. Alright, you're barely going to notice that you did anything. Alright, and then the final step to make our diagonals, alright, is to connect the end of this line with the little dot that we made at the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to line it up here, and then line it up at the bottom, and then I can just connect the dots. Okay, same over here. I'm just going to connect the end of the line with a dot at the bottom. Okay, and then the last thing is to make them dotted lines. So I'll erase parts of this inside line because it's going to get folded right there. So you want to make sure you don't cut it, you actually fold it. Alright, and so I make my dotted lines by erasing. If you had wanted to make dotted lines when you made your square originally, that would have been fine, but it's just, to me, I just don't like to do that. So now we have a completed measured air scoop. Oop, my camera is crooked. There we go. Alright, and so if you've done it correctly so far, you're ready to move on to the next video. If you missed steps, feel free to go back and re-watch parts. Pause the video as often as you want. That's the point of doing a video, rather than me standing in front of you and showing you step by step how to do it. If I had to do step by step in front of you doing it, it would take us 5 years. This way I'm hoping that it takes us a little less time and you can be more independent about making it on your own rather than listening to me make it. Alright, and so that's the first part of the air skimmer videos. So feel free to stop, close it, open the next one, or restart it.